Look, Woody, as far as the eye can see, it's the great American Firewall. You're watching Techstrong Gang. Hi, everyone. Happy Tuesday. It's Alan Shimel here for the Techstrong Gang. You know, we're running mean and lean here on this Tuesday. I've just got two other gang members with me today. As we've got a bunch of people flying and trains, planes, and automobiles. But couldn't think of two better people to do this with. Let me first go to our Steady Eddie in Hudson, Ohio. He is the founder and president or CEO, whatever. He's the man who breathes life into Tech Field Day every day. And he's also a great gang member, Stephen Foskett. Stephen, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm pretty good. I prefer Galactic Dictator. That would be a good title
We
for me.
already have one of those, I thought.
Okay. Or maybe Shimel Understudy after last
Could be,
week's
yeah,
activity.
that's right. You know, I saw there was a little insert into the program for the gang, right? Tonight, playing the role of Shimel is Foskett. Funny stuff. Stephen, welcome and thanks for being here. Joining Stephen and I live in our Boca Raton headquarters, she's our Sustainability Echo Insights, and she has a report coming out soon, but we'll talk more about that in the days and weeks ahead. Our own Bonnie Schneider. Hi, Bonnie. How are you?
I'm doing well, Alan. Thanks for having me, and I'm looking forward to talking about that.
We call that a tease.
Yes, those are good teas.
Okay. So, guys, let's just jump right into things here. You know, I led off with this great American Firewall. It's funny. You know, a little bit of competition, and all of a sudden, everybody's putting up, not everybody, but a lot of folks, even in Silicon Valley, where I would think we would know better, are calling for the government to help them. And you know, those are the 9 most popular words, right? I'm from the government, I'm here to help. For government help in keeping out AI products, AI technologies that's not here in the US. And, you know, we want to keep out content, we want to keep out students, we want to keep out a lot of people, a lot of ideas, a lot of technology. Keep out seems to be the key phrase here. Stephen, I don't know, just these things never end well, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think they don't end well. You know, walls have a tendency of trapping you in just as effectively or maybe more effectively than they do to trap people out. It's sort of a truism that, you know, you're more likely to be stymied by your own lock than somebody else be stymied by it. But the interesting thing with regard specifically to AI is that the more that they've tried to crack down on China's access to American technology around AI, the more that the Chinese researchers have figured out ways of getting around it, whether that's making the most of the H800 and then the H20, or whether it's figuring out optimizations for training. And, you know, I would say that the Biden administration's policies toward China are the direct cause of DeepSeek mania that we lived through last week. And frankly, if there's more great controls placed on access to technology, it's likely that it will divide the industry even further. And we'll see China have even more homegrown technical developments. Now, it is important to point out that their technical development is not entirely homegrown, as we've learned since the announcement of DeepSeek. It leveraged, it could not exist, not leverage it. It literally could not have been done without literally all of the previous work of developing AI models and without literally using the AI models that had been exported. So maybe if those had been controlled, they couldn't have done it. But I'm not really sure how well those controls might work. And frankly, not to sound too much like a libertarian here, but maybe if we allowed more people more access to stuff and had a more free market, it would prevent strange market distortions like we're seeing.
Yeah, I think that's true as well. I think also there can be more of a balance between protecting intellectual property and also, maybe not the extreme, like Stephen was saying, that with a wall there comes consequences, but having a little more guidance when it comes to intellectual property theft, which tends to lead to this on a larger scale, particularly from China. I think that's an important thing to note.
Yep. Stephen, a smart man I know once told me, when you build a wall like that, it tends to keep you in and not stuff out. And I think that's what we are guilty of here. Um, Look, we've discussed this in past gangs. The irony of OpenAI claiming DeepSeek used scraped their information without permission from a company that scraped the internet and their entire being was used without permission is pretty ironic. But at the end of the day, I'm not necessarily a libertarian either. But Stephen, I have to agree with you. I think this is a case where if you put it out there, we're all better off. We're all better off as humans as a result of it. Now, that being said, there's got to be rules. There's got to be rules you play by in terms of theft of IP and respecting IP. And certainly the Chinese over the years have been guilty of stealing IP and using it, whether it's espionage or state-sponsored espionage or commercial espionage or just pure theft. And you need to put safeguards in place there. You need to deal with that. I'm not saying go put tariffs on them for it, but people need to respect the rules of the game, and then let the winners come where they may be. But I just think it is such a bad idea to be thinking about building an American firewall where we're going to try to keep others out, keep our technology to ourselves. It just doesn't end well.
Yeah, and
I'm
I think
sorry.
it contradicts the open source transparency. It's almost like you want to have it both ways.
It contradicts, you know, whether you agree with the libertarian philosophy or not. There is something to be said about the power of a free market to foster innovation. And what you got here was a great example of, and I wrote this in an article 2 weeks already now ago, necessity's the mother of invention. If you don't give people access to this, they'll figure out how to. I'm reminded of Star Wars when Obi-Wan tells Darth he can strike him down, but he'll be stronger than he ever was. And that's what you get here. Let's not be Darth Vader.
Yeah, we don't want to be Darth Vader. And
No.
so earlier I was channeling the libertarian mindset. I don't want to sound too protectionist, but I can actually see a case to be made, though, that there should be controls on applications and access to certain applications. I mean, the flip side of a free market is that the government's role should be in interest in maintaining freedom and fairness in those markets. And so, for example, anti-dumping laws make a lot of sense. Like, we shouldn't allow a AI model from some country to be introduced with massive government subsidies or something, so that it undercuts competition and cuts off competition. We also shouldn't allow free access and no one, not the Chinese, but not the Americans either, should be breaking copyright controls and ignoring robots.txt and slurping up literally libraries full of copyrighted works in order to build their models. Nobody should be allowed to do that, because that breaks the free market too. I think that that's one of those things where people forget that, with freedom comes responsibility. I'm not Spider-Man's uncle, but something like that. If we're going to have a free market, we also need to have very strong control and responsibility to make sure that we're actually playing fairly. A free market requires fairness. And so in my mind, the government ultimately should be interested in promoting fairness and democracy and freedom along with promoting capitalism. And that's an issue with the new administration. They seem to be very interested in capitalism, but not very interested in promoting fairness in the market.
Agreed. 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 Well, and unfortunately, you mentioned the Biden administration, Stephen, was, I think, very guilty of squeezing it so hard that they let the sand run through their fingers. That might be child's play compared to what we see over the next 4 years in this. And I fear we are going to just be putting up walls. I mean, this is an administration who ran on walls.
They
and
love
building
walls.
Yeah.
Tariffs are just financial walls.
Yeah. So we'll hope for the best,
Mhm.
I guess, and prepare for the worst as well. Because the other thing is, you put up a wall, and because you want to keep out, let's say in this case, China. Well, what about some of our so-called allies, or they were our allies? I don't know how much longer they'll be our allies, but you know, we need that global collaboration. You can't exist in isolation like
Right.
this. This is a lesson of history that, and you don't learn the lessons of history, you're doomed to repeat them. So anyway, we're going to take a break. The Pink Floyd song, about the walls. Was a great album. Did I ever say I saw them in Nassau Coliseum?
Oh, Nassau.
19, I guess it was maybe 1980, maybe something like that. The Wall tour. Yes, tear down the wall. Anyway, all right. You're watching Techstrong Gang.
Discover Techstrong Group, the epicenter of tech innovation. We're your go-to for reaching IT leaders and practitioners worldwide. Our secret? Impactful content that sparks awareness, engagement, and top-quality leads. With us, you'll access editorial websites, streaming videos, virtual events, custom content, analyst research, and more. Join our satisfied clients. Let's revolutionize your tech journey. Contact us today and tell your story to the world in the most powerful way with Techstrong Group.
Well, here's our surprise for the day. The DOJ is actually suing to block a merger. $14 billion HPE takeover of Juniper Networks, which I thought was long done, but evidently not. Stephen, this doesn't sound like, was this a leftover from the last administration? What do you think?
Yeah, it definitely is a leftover from the last administration. We actually covered this on the Gestalt IT rundown just before the handover of power when it was originally announced. And I suggested at that time that maybe this might change under the new administration, or maybe not, since I was also wondering if maybe they might keep Lena Khan. They didn't, spoiler alert. But they do seem to have some of the same antipathy toward Silicon Valley companies and so on. So what my suggestion at that point was, it's not a sure thing that the DOJ would drop this case. And sure enough, they haven't. They've proceeded with it. Now, I don't want to say that I don't want definitely going to proceed. Now, they have proceeded with it. But I wonder, too, this could be something of a leftover or some momentum in the court system or some remaining Biden administration DOJ folks who are continuing on with their goals and their mission and their project in hopes that it won't be shut down by the new administration. But regardless of the politics of the thing, I think that it's also important to consider the implications here. Essentially, we have a few remaining enterprise IT juggernauts. We've got Dell and HPE, who are extremely strong and, kind of full platform partners for the enterprise, along with Lenovo as a key full platform partner as well. And then we've got a lot of these monoliths that are extremely strong in their area. So you look at companies like Juniper or NetApp and Pure Storage and Vast Data in the storage space. But in the networking space, Juniper really does stand alone as a interesting and very successful competitor. I guess you could put Arista in that market as well, but Juniper, I think, has been able to really find incredible success in a couple of verticals, basically internet routing and switching, and now, thanks to the Mist acquisition, enterprise Wi-Fi, to the extent that HPE, which owns the Aruba Wi-Fi assets and has been very successful with that, has been gunning for Juniper and Mist with their Beat Mist campaign for a while. Now, Cisco remains by far the leader in some of these markets, but Juniper is a very, very strong competitor, and HPE in many cases is the third player in those markets. And so having HPE acquire Juniper really is sort of a consolidation of, kind of the number two, number three in many markets into a very, very strong number two in those markets, and would, according to the DOJ, stifle competition. So, if we look at the acquisition from that perspective, I can absolutely see why the DOJ might be interested. But frankly, I can't understand why the Trump administration would be interested, because these are very kind of below the radar companies. Even HPE, I can't imagine has much of a seat at the table in this new administration.
So let me expand on that, and excuse me for being snarkily cynical.
That's what we expect.
Right. Someone didn't pay their $1 million for the inauguration ball fee.
Mm.
And if someone does come over there to kiss a ring, this deal will be allowed to go through. That's my 2 cents. But to your point, Stephen, you're right. The network, and I think this deal is not just IT, enterprise IT infrastructure per se, meaning servers and some of the things that Dell, HP, and Lenovo do. But this is very specific to networking and wireless networking. And the market isn't what it was, right? You still have Cisco, who's the 800-pound gorilla. But when we talk about networking, especially high-speed networking and stuff, where there's a big money, big dollar boxes, Stephen, you left out Broadcom.
Well, that's true. And because I was really focusing on the
wireless,
sort of the traditional enterprise market.
Right.
Now, in the cloud market, Broadcom is the massive gorilla, because they are basically the OEM to the stars for all of that market. They do a tremendous amount of business there. And of course, they also are the developers. They're sort of the, quote, Intel inside for most of the rest of the market as well. Yeah, absolutely. Broadcom is a company that ought to be as below the radar as they possibly could to keep any DOJ interest.
Especially not being U.S. based, right? But
well, I think Broadcom is technically a U.S.-based company, aren't they? I'll look it up. But you're right. I mean, Antonio Neri definitely should get on a plane to Mar-a-Lago and bring a suitcase full of money. And I bet that this particular one will go away.
They always say to bring a suitcase full of money to Florida. Remember, you are to Florida, bring a suitcase of money.
But so when you look, and the other thing is, I grew up, if you will, in the internet age from a career point of view, right? Most of my career, well, a good chunk of my career has been spent with the internet. And Juniper represented the fresh, bright, next gen networking, if you will, right? Look, security, they bought the NetScreen firewalls, and that was the hottest stuff out there. They were the first ones that really hit Cisco square in the nose with high-speed routing and that kind of thing.
And they've been very successful with that. Yes,
they have, and they always were. But over the last 5 to 7 years, they fell on some harder times. They didn't, though they were big in being the internet network of a gear of choice, they didn't catch the cloud wave quick enough, and Broadcom did eat their lunch there. Cisco is Cisco. HP, ProCurve, and then they bought, as you said, Aruba and all of that. They've kept their niche, though. You know, it's funny. I was just talking to Fernando Montenegro, the new Futurum analyst for security, who used to work at ProCurve back in the early 2000s. And we were talking about what an opportunity squandered there. They could have been a strong number 2 to Cisco, right? And who knows what Juniper or Broadcom would have done had there been a more powerful, a more strategized ProCurve. But
Well,
it's interesting. Go ahead.
yeah, I mean, HP and HPE have a long history of attempting to become a competitor for Cisco. I mean, I worked for 3Com many years ago.
They bought them too.
And so certainly there have been many, many attempts by HP to be active in that market. And this latest one, Juniper would give them really a solid foundation. That being said, I don't want to predict whether it really would, like an HP plus Juniper really would end up becoming a strong kind of 2-horse race instead of a 1-horse race and a bunch of competitors. And then on the Broadcom side, by the way, I can confirm Broadcom is 100% an American company and always has been. So
just their CEO lives in Singapore.
Well, he's from Malaysia, but I think he lives here, doesn't he? Well, that's another topic. Anyway, but Hock Tan, he's a incredibly, incredibly sharp guy, and I think he's been sharp enough to stay below the radar. Because I think if you ask tech people, I mean, here we are on the Techstrong Gang, and we have some confusion about Broadcom and so on. They're probably the number 1 company in tech in terms of importance of their products. And like you said, I mean, especially when you look at their, the depth and breadth of their networking capabilities and talent and products, they're everywhere. And yet, many in tech, I think, would kind of overlook and forget to even mention them. And I do want to make sure that we point out Arista is another incredibly strong powerhouse in networking. They're in Wi-Fi, they're in security, they're in, enterprise and campus switching. I mean, they're all over the place. We're seeing a game of musical chairs. That's kind of what I was alluding to at the beginning here. I think Juniper felt that they needed a chair now, and HPE provided that chair. So it's in Juniper's interest to make this acquisition go forward. I think when Juniper sits down with HPE, which I do think they will, I think it's going to go through. I'm not super worried that this thing won't happen. I think when that happens, we're going to see attention turning toward Arista and Pure Storage and NetApp and some of these other competitors and figure out, okay, where's your chair? And that could be an interesting 2025.
Absolutely. Stephen, we'll end this segment with this. I agree with you. I think ultimately this deal gets done. DOJ drops it. Whether it's someone goes to Florida with whatever or something else, this deal gets done.
And we'll update it on the gang.
We'll keep you posted.
Let me tell you, Trump Presidential Library is going to be the Taj Mahal. Because remember, all this money, you say what you want, all this money is not going to Trump. It's going to Trump's Presidential Library.
Oh, and yeah, exactly.
And
you know
that
what? But mark my words, the
amazing.
day they put him in the ground, his children will be fighting over every cent of it, and none of it will go there.
It's going to be like Succession.
Exactly. That's exactly what this could be. Anyway, let's take, Stephen, you're making me, we need a balance. We're going to take a break here on Techstrong Gang. We'll be back with a special report from Bonnie on sustainable technology for the DoD.
I'm Bonnie Schneider, sustainability contributor to the Techstrong Group. I'm excited to introduce you to a groundbreaking new initiative from Techstrong Research, the Sustainability Pulse Meter. The Pulse Meter offers valuable insights into how environmental responsibility factors into tech purchasing decisions for key players in the industry. Position your company as a leader in the industry and differentiate from your competitors with the Sustainability Pulse Meter, offered exclusively from Techstrong Research. Welcome back to the Techstrong Gang. Earlier, we were talking about a lawsuit, whether it was left over from the last administration, what's going to happen with this administration. Well, our next story is also sort of related to the changes in the administration. I'll tell you why. Because late last year, the Department of Defense began testing sustainable materials in weapon cleaning, in efficiency in buildings, and that policy was successful. So now they're looking to expand it across military operations. Now, that was the end of last year before this new administration, but we'll see. It could be something that's carried over. So I wanted to take a closer look at the technology behind sustainability in the military.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bonnie Schneider with your EcoTech Analyst Insights. What does soybean oil, LED lights, and a bio-based weapon cleaner have in common? They're part of a new U.S. Department of Defense program to test and deploy sustainable technology. How is this implemented? Well, one example is found with a weapon cleaner made from agricultural materials instead of petroleum. When tested by Marine Corps shooting teams, the cleaner reportedly cut maintenance time in half, from 60 minutes to 30 minutes per weapon, and reduced carbon buildup by 30%. Based on these results, the military issued its first sustainable materials requirement for tactical equipment. All weapon cleaners must contain a minimum of 30% bio-based content. Other eco-friendly measures include smart controls for lighting and heating for military buildings to reduce power use. The Department of Defense is expanding the sustainability program across major commands, focusing on technologies that meet performance requirements and supply chain metrics.
You know, a lot of these things just seem like common sense. Being more energy efficient in buildings, for example, that's something people are doing across the board. But the biodegradable weapon cleaners, maybe there'll be some objection to that. But overall, from what I've seen, the members of the DoD that are involved in this project were very pleased with the outcomes, and the people that were using the weapons also were pleased with the results they were getting.
Stephen, thoughts?
Well, let's get a little bit of context in here, as I love to do. So first off, the BioPreferred program was from the Department of Agriculture and came out of the 2002 Farm Bill, 2002, not 22. And so the idea that the federal government would be investing in bio-based products is not new and is actually pretty entrenched. Unfortunately, from what I've seen, a lot of that has been somewhat controversial in whether or not those bio-based products are actually all that good for the environment. I mean, if you think about the controversy over diesel and ethanol-based fuels for vehicles and so on, in many cases, those things may not be as good for the environment as we would hope. Now, having this extend to the DoD and to certain programs like, weapons cleaners, sure. If the product is good, and it sounds like this product, as Bonnie pointed out in the story, is a pretty good product, I can't imagine that people wouldn't want to use it. In fact, I did a little research on this thing, and it looks like home gun enthusiasts, yes, we have those in America for our international listeners, they like this product too. So in that case, I imagine that this would probably take off if the thing works and is affordable and is a good product. Same with, smart lighting. Smart lighting is not in itself a controversial topic, especially when, as you look at the statistics here, it says that 10% of the electricity used on military bases is for exterior lighting. Yeah, how about some smart lighting? That seems like a good idea. But at the same time, I'm just a little nervous that somebody in this current new administration is going to get wind of something bio, something
Or climate
ecology,
smart.
climate, and then they're going to squash this thing down right quick. I mean, Trump has already talked about how much he hates LED light bulbs and low flow showers and electric cars. So
No,
good
it's
luck.
true. It's true. This is going to be one to watch, I think, going forward.
But let's not kid ourselves. They're going to say this is some woke bullshit and try to get rid of it, right? And that's unfortunately the current state of affairs in this country. They've already, they will purge it from the website as they're purging all of the research and stuff being done.
I was
This-
shocked to find that it's still on the website, by the way. I looked it up and I was
Exactly.
like, oh my
Because
gosh, .gov.
this is going to go out in an anti-woke kind of thing. And
Somebody's going to hear about it on this show.
You're
It's
right,
your
and they're
fault,
going to call
Bonnie.
Pete Hexa.
you know, this is, look, elections have consequences.
Well, you know what? At least in the shorter term, as Stephen's pointing out, there's awareness about it. If home enthusiasts are finding it effective, it will gain awareness and maybe gain some traction. There were some, I would say, controversial aspects of it because we're talking about smart lighting, and some of the testing is done with night vision. And I think that that's going to be hard to measure, especially in the case of a serious emergency, where I could see both sides coming out with viewpoints on it. But as of now, in early 2025, this program's still in effect.
Look, when the official policy of the government is that climate change isn't real, when you're not allowed to mention any of these types of clean energy and drill baby drill is the motto, you're kidding yourself.
Okay, let's end on a positive note.
Okay.
Well, how about a positive note? I'll give you a positive note. As I've said about solar panels, the same is true about LED lighting. The same is true about some bio-based materials. The same is true about batteries and electric cars. When the horse is out of the barn, when wind power is a effective and money-generating industry across the world, you're not going to be able to squash that just because you don't like some aspect of that. If the product works, it's going to get used because that's how things go.
Across the world.
That's great.
Here within the confines of our walled environment, who knows? But I hope so, Stephen. I think that's going to wrap up our Techstrong Gang for this beautiful Tuesday. We'll be back tomorrow, Wednesday, with more fresh, good stuff to talk about. A lot going on in tech. We're coming into conference season as well, so we'll get some updates there. But until then, Stephen, thanks. Well, Stephen, when's the next Tech Field Day?
Well, we are looking at, we're going to be at Cisco Live in Amsterdam, and we are also getting ready for Cloud Field Day, and both of those are happening here in February. So keep an eye out for those, or check out techfieldday.com for more information on those.
Great.
Fantastic. All right. Until tomorrow, then, this is Alan Shimel for Techstrong Gang on behalf of Stephen and Bonnie. Thanks for joining us. As usual, we've got a full Techstrong TV lineup following this, so do stay tuned for that. But until then, we're out.